All right, we are live. Good morning, folks. We are back with another edition of Top Trades. I'm here with my buddy Enrique, the world traveler. He is actually in Baltimore today. We're in the same building, just hiding out in different offices right now to record this call. Enrique, how's it going?
Good, good. It's a beautiful day in Baltimore yesterday. Rainy day today.
Yeah, I
So,
think it's going to rain the rest of the week here. It's been raining gains in the market, though. How do you like that segue? That's pretty good, right? That's like professional right there.
yeah, it's been something. It's been
So,
something, I definitely caught some people off foot, I'll say that.
yeah. I mean, it feels like everybody who panic sold is now chasing. They're back to buying with both hands here, and we're getting a little short-term overbought, I think is fair to say. I think you might agree with me there. So give me your perspective on, how a pro handles this type of a market and how you look to sell into strength like this and what your next steps are from here when the market does something like this and post such a breakneck recovery.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, I think one thing to understand about the type of V that we're seeing in the market has a lot to do with the word you said, pro, and what professionals have to do. And, being an institutional money manager, managing money for large investors and high net worth individuals has some really big drawbacks. And one of those drawbacks is you have to pay attention to the market, and it's very important. And you also have to be fairly invested most times because if you're not, people are like, "Why am I paying you fees?" And so, I think it was easy for a lot of those folks to, I won't call it panic, they would call it risk manage, um, and sell out of, a lot of positions. And then now, as we've begun to recover, they're forced to chase it because they're kind of in the situation as, they were down 10 and the market was down 10 and they go, I can't go down 30 if the market's going to go down 30. So
Right.
I got to bring down exposure. And now the markets come snapping right back. And all of a sudden they go, holy cow, that looked really good when I was down 10 and the market was down 20. But now I'm down 8 and the market's down 3. And, and it's kind of this swing. And it doesn't really have anything to do with anything. It's a lot of positioning. Now, the awesome thing, and we talk about this all the time, is that you all, the audience here, none of this matters to you. Like you don't, it's your money. Like it's you can sit on all cash if you want. You can sell, you can buy. You don't really care what the market's doing. I mean, you care in the sense that the market's going to play a role in what kinds of opportunities and how well they're going to work. But this has been a textbook market showing the challenges for institutional money. And that's when people look at this and they go, oh, it's just crazy how much it's V'd and like how one way the market's been. Because that's the other thing is the market was one way this way and then one way this way. And you'd be like, that's so strange. Well, not necessarily. This is people chasing. So throw away all. So that it's just an insight. But what the heck do you do here? Well, I'm going to stick with what I've been saying, and I'll make a couple points. Number one, you don't have the type of volatility we've got and then have a complete V back to the highs without some sort of material retest, recursor volatility, something. Number two, let's just throw all that out. And I'm going to tell you the S&P right now is at an RSI of 67. If we had been at highs and then broken out to an RSI of 67, I'd be fading it. If we were in a full uptrend, I'd fade S&P RSI of 67. So the fact that we're coming out of this period of high volatility with an RSI of 67, I fade it. So, in the Maverick, the people who are subscribers, we just sold the last of our stocks. We have zero positions on right now. And I love it because the final thing that's happening here, I'm getting ready for two things to happen. Number one, stocks are trading like stocks again. We had a period of time, and this is normal. This happens a couple times a year, where it didn't really matter what the company reported. It was all about the market. Well, now I'm seeing just clean stock setups. I mean, we kind of got one in Google. Tomorrow's idea for the Maverick, which is all ready to go, is a fantastic, just pure stock setup. So that's cool. We can do that. Number two is, the FOMO is strong right now. I have to say, there's a lot of people with regrets for doing what I think were the right moves. I just love being in cash. Like I'm just like now I'm waiting for a fat pitch. The fat pitch, by the way, and we bought a bunch of stuff back in early April was to do that. Then to let the market come back. But I think that patience is a virtue, and we're going to get either individual stock setups now begin to work both on breakouts and mean reversions, and we're going to get a nice bite at the apple. And I will give this one last thing, and I'm going to go through this to the Maverick a lot tomorrow. The breadth thrust that we have seen, we just saw a DeGraff breadth thrust, which is also a super rare one after all these WEG breadth thrust, and I can explain what these are. They really point to, I think you can buy the dips here if you get any serious volatility. So look, I'm you've played it very well. Mavericks played it very well. I love this market. I'm so happy to be sitting on 100% cash and waiting for opportunities. And it's just a freeing mental spot. I don't care. I want Trump to say something stupid. Okay. Right. I bring it on. Now I'm on the situation where we can take complete advantage of it. So, I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking at it from a high level. But I just get back to this one thing. If we were coming off highs and we were at an RSI of 67, I'd be selling. So this is no different.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you think, I mean, and this is just pure guesswork at this point, but I mean, I think we're going to need to consolidate in some way here. Do you think we're going to actually get a clean consolidation, or do you think we're going to see some more fake outs lower? Like, how do you envision this playing out? Or are you not even thinking those terms from right now?
The answer is I don't know. I kind of don't know, don't care. I'm starting to see individual stock situations emerge again, like what we're going to do tomorrow, and I just love that. So those I don't care. I will say this: with the kind of damage that's been done, with the volatility that's going to come in operating numbers, and with the market having V'd out, I really struggle to see how we just go back to highs without getting back down, 5,300, 5,400, without putting a little fear into people. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But the most important part of this whole conversation is I don't care. We're sitting on cash. So if the market doesn't pull back, we're going to just start harvesting our natural setups. And if the market does pull back, well, then we've got, bonus time, because now I've got these breadth signals in the backdrop that give me more confidence buying. So, I'm probably 80, 90%. We have to have some sort of scare in the next 3 months, but the great thing is I don't care. We're going to make money either way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it certainly feels like, I mean, obviously we have the stocks that were most highly affected, that people were dumping because of tariff scares. Those are the ones that really ripped. And we're seeing a lot of strong breakouts in growth names right now. Crypto, I mean, crypto's been going crazy.
Take a look at Hood, man. Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I mean, a lot of these, and obviously, like, this is, I have a nice chunk of Robinhood shares. It's a great stock, but we're getting up in the stratosphere here and names like this, which is fine. I mean, it's definitely overbought. I wouldn't be chasing this right here, but I mean, some incredible moves in these, and like the stocks that we've been talking a lot about, like we're seeing a lot of charts that are setting up like this. Like Uber is breaking out again today to new highs. Not something I would buy here, but we're seeing people just pile into these names.
And look, Hood is literally doubled in a month.
Yeah.
Okay. So I got to tell you, I love Hood. I think Hood, I'm going to tell you something crazy. I think Hood could be $1 trillion company. Okay. Hood's got a market cap of 50 billion. So you heard it here first. Hood could be $1 trillion company. It's going to take a few years, mind you. But
yeah, it'll take a while.
But I don't care. When you go up 100% in 35 days, you sell some stock, because it's not like it's not like people thought it was going bankrupt on April 4th or April 8th. So it's not like that'd be one thing. If you've got a company that's going bankrupt and it's not going bankrupt, yeah, it can double, triple, quintuple, in a short time frame. You take some profits. I just think not taking profits here. And again, I want to emphasize this because I know there's so much FOMO out there. Not taking profits here is, I do it if we were at our highs. and it's just the right move. But you're starting to see these setups. Like I'll give you one. We joked about it last week, but let's talk about like your kind of setup. Take a look at AppLovin, right?
Yep.
Trades at a gajillion times earnings. There's tons of short reports. We don't care because we basically pointed out that the company has a history of crushing numbers. They've beaten the number by 15% or more for 7, 8 quarters, and it's traded up 10% or more. And
Yep.
they reported a week ago, and what did they do?
Up
Well,
almost 12%.
they beat the number by 15%.
Yep.
So that was an example of that. I'm getting comfortable that I would play that hand, right? Because if this were 3, 4 weeks ago, I'd be like, I don't, yes, while all that's true, I just, the market, Trump could come out tomorrow and say China 84 days, like boom, and it goes up or down 5%. Now we're starting to get these clean setups, and it's kind of nice. I like trading these crazy volatile markets because they give you really awesome major setups. But it's kind of nice to just have these individual stock setups like AppLovin,
Yeah.
which basically work. So I think it's good. It's really great. Hopefully everyone navigated this period as well as possible. If you followed what Greg and I have been doing, I think we both navigated it very well. I'm exceptionally proud. The Maverick is at like an 83% hit rate for positions on all of our positions since inception. I want to say 29 winners and 6 losers or something since November, and the market topped in November. But what I was going to say is like you need to be right now in this reset cash, wait for the setups because they're going to come. The stock setups are going to come. And what's going to be interesting is I'm very interested to see stock setups on things that are going to miss numbers off of the volatility. So, and look, we may recommend this one, but go pull up ON. No, sorry. No, ONN. What's the shoe company?
On. There we go.
On. Okay. Sorry.
No.
This is a great example. So this thing just popped into they report earnings. I haven't even looked at this. You know, net sales beat. But I'll give you an example. Is that sales beat here, but this is a company that I'm going to be very surprised that they don't see some earnings volatility in the next 3 months, and this would be the kind of thing that you would want to pick off. And here's the reason why is that the earnings volatility. They get 80% of their shoes from China and Vietnam, et cetera. There's going to be disruptions. So now I think we're in a position where we can buy awesome companies that had major disruptions that have rallied now. This stock's back to where it was. And now we're going to see disruptions in front of us and just sit there and just harvest that volatility and just, pick off these spots. Like now is a rifle market as opposed to a shotgun market. And, hopefully everyone's sitting on some cash and some gains for the year. I don't know that anyone's going to be sitting on 10, 20, 30% gains like they would maybe last year. But, if you're flat up 5, 10%, now you can start to just, target and sniper off these opportunities like one that we're going to show in the Maverick tomorrow.
Yeah, it's always great when you go from a market. Well, for my trading style, when you go from a market where you have to kind of do things a little bit differently because breakouts aren't working, and then you get to a point like this where you're getting more of those setups that work for you, and I can just see them lining up because my watch lists start getting longer. The names that I start liking, that I feel like I'm more confident in my ability to trade them, gets longer. Going back to just crypto real quick, because we've been a little bit all over the place. I wanted to get your thoughts on some of the things going on on that side of the market. I know we have Hood and we have Coin being added to the S&P, and it's popping on that. It's up 18% today on that news. But I feel like there's something bigger brewing, and I'm very impressed with the resilience of, I guess, the retail crowd and the speculator crowd, because, I mean, it's been, like you said, like folks that aren't tuned in to like what you're doing or what I'm doing, like they've obviously been struggling, in this market. And I would assume that a lot of them would have packed their stuff and gone home, but they're still out there. And over the weekend, we saw, this rally, which started out as a Bitcoin rally back over 100K, just grow into it's just going down the cap scale, and all these other coins are starting to move. All the older coins, like Solana, Ripple, all those are moving higher. The meme coins are going again. I don't really follow a lot of like the silly meme coins and all that, but I saw the alerts on my phone popping up, and these coins are on a roll. You mentioned something to me earlier, if I could
Well,
talk about this with you, but you think that like we're in a crazy enough market where something like you said, what you can wake up on any given day and maybe Trump coin is up to like 80
I
bucks, something like that.
and so here's what we can start to do is like the last 4 weeks have been about look, we were in a trend. We were positioned for that trend. The trend changed because of the volatility. You needed to fix all your stuff, like reposition to not get, like really hurt. And then you could begin to take advantage of setups that were coming out of that trend change. Okay. That's been the story of the last 4 weeks. Now you can begin to take advantage of the new things that are setting up. And so, what I think is interesting about Trump coin, and do you have a chart for Trump coin? Does it pull up here?
I can give it a shot. I've never actually tried to pull it up on here.
I tried to pull it up on Bloomberg and I couldn't.
Here you go.
Is that Trump coin? Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is the kind of market now where you can do things like the breakouts, like a lot of the winning trades you've had. You can do things like earnings plays, like app, which we talked about. You can do things like my mean reversion. I also think you can start setting up for some of these, you know, free speculation optionality plays. We did this with GameStop, and I still think GameStop is an excellent setup for this. But I actually think Trump coin is a really interesting speculation right now. Like, I think you could go in and don't do it with a lot, but buy a 0.5%, 1%, 2% of your portfolio in Trump coin. And I just feel like if I told you at the end of 2025 that there was some moment where Trump coin traded at 40, we could all sit here and be like, yeah, I could see that. Like, I don't know why it would do it, but it doesn't matter. Like, there's going to be some moment where it's going to catch. And so these are the types of intelligent speculations I think that you can engage in once again if you've fixed your portfolio. And look, my evidence here. Look at the chart of DJT, right? If you went back, DJT, there was even a moment in time last year in July, it was trading around 12. And then in the next day, it traded to 25, just on no news. It did it back in November of 22. So you can, as a trader, we've got breakouts, we've got earnings, we've got mean revision, we've got sort of positioning for speculative, moves. And I think that we can start to bring out all these moves. I just would say one thing is be thoughtful about ramping exposure back up, because I really don't think that we're it would be highly unusual to not have another bout of like OS that this isn't over. It'll be really surprising. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but just be methodical is actually the word I wanted to use about building back exposure. But take some shots. I think that they're the market's setting up for it.
Yeah, and like just to be clear, like I see some of the comments we're talking about, like wouldn't touch Trump coin with like three layers of vinyl gloves on. I get that. I get the feeling about that, and I prefer to trade like the equity market around crypto stuff too. This isn't like a political statement. It's just like this is the type of environment we're in. What can happen in this type of environment? This is the type of coin that can explode higher on something. It's not a take on like what like someone commented something like, well, what's the value behind it? There's no value behind
There's no value behind it.
Like, no value behind it. It's a speculation, and it's something that could do well in this particular market.
So look, trading isn't about valuation. Trading isn't about the cash flow that the company's doing. Trading's not about like, any of these things. Trading's about identifying, repeatable patterns and putting yourself in front of asymmetrical risk rewards. Now, most of the time, and 95% of what we do, those asymmetrical patterns are defined by these operating fundamental metrics we talk about, but other times they're not. And what I'm saying is there's a way to do this in a diversified, manner. But yeah, I mean, look, in the Maverick, we're not going to be recommending Trump coin anytime soon, probably ever. We've got
Right.
we got tomorrow's idea is this awesome company, incredible track record, incredible management, crushing numbers. Stock just sold off 25%. And that's, you want that solid ground underneath you. But what I'm saying is, I'm looking out at what's beginning to emerge again, and these are opportunities they're absolutely viable if you size them right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely not one to bet the farm on for sure. And also, like I know somebody mentioned this in the chat too. They were talking about GameStop as a crypto play. This looks like it's setting up really nicely right here as well. I know you like
I,
this.
I love GameStop as a crypto play. I mean, they've got 5 billion of cash. We don't know how much Bitcoin they bought or didn't buy. But they just, if you actually look at the chart of Bitcoin and when GameStop actually, check this out. GameStop announced that they were going to be buying crypto on March 26th, and they probably could have bought it before that. Go pull up the chart of Bitcoin and look at when it bottomed.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So it
So
bottomed.
they could have bought it. They could have bought $2 billion with an 8 handle,
Wow.
with
Yeah.
something, and it's at 105 now, and they're sitting on a 25% gain on $3 billion. I don't know. I mean, I guess we're going to find out, but it kind of doesn't matter. Like I think this is, and I'll tell you though. Let's go back to GameStop, which I've talked about here before. With Hood doing what Hood is doing, and Coin doing what Coin is doing, I look at that GameStop chart and it screams 30 or 40 to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, these are trades, folks. Like we can go, in breaking profits. I've got long-term investments in the Maverick where we do a lot of earnings-based stuff. But this thing, I mean, I think that the cryptos are going to lead this out of here. What's MicroStrategy done, by the way? Like I haven't even looked.
I think it was down yesterday, wasn't it? Yeah. Now it's
MicroStrategy's round tripped. The
yeah.
fact that MicroStrategy chart literally blows my mind. Like, I mean, it is the Bitcoin chart, but the
Yeah.
fact that this leveraged house of convertible bond cards,
Yeah.
convertible house of cards, managed to get through this volatility. Look, it speaks to the underlying strength of the market and these breadth thrusts. We just had a DeGraff breadth thrust, which is, I want to say, 60% of stocks getting on a 20-day moving average overbought or something like that. It just indicates like a real underlying bid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go through that in the Maverick tomorrow in depth. Look, the market is tradable again. Because when we're in that hurricane, that was happening in the last month with the VIX above 25, 30, yeah, the market was, there were trades to be done, but stocks weren't tradable. That's actually it. You would need to be trading the market. Now I think you could be trading stocks.
Yeah. And just one more comment about MicroStrategy. I think like everybody was worried about it, quote unquote, breaking, and that was like the big thing that everybody was gossiping about back here in like March and April. And now look where we are. Like you said, like it's right back up. Totally survived. No big deal.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and look, at some point, well, is MicroStrategy ever going to break? I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. We've been on here calling. We called for it to go to 100,000. I think it could go to 250,000 even this year. I think it's
Yeah.
going to 1 million. Literally think it's going to 1 million. So when and if that happens, MicroStrategy probably isn't going away. MicroStrategy has a very dangerous strategy. They shouldn't call it MicroStrategy. They should call it crazy strategy. It's like, I guess the company's name is just strategy now, right?
I
So
I think so. Yeah.
I forgot about that. But yeah, no, look, I think we're getting some nice setups, but just be patient, right? Look at this MicroStrategy RSI is 67. I mean, what's the RSI and Hood? What is that? Like, I'm just pulling it up.
75,
76. Yeah,
76.
76. Just wait. Just wait. You're gonna get these setups. They're gonna come.
Yeah.
What I love here too, I'll tell you what I really love, and I hadn't really thought about this. we got a ton of overbought stocks, and we got a ton of earnings volatility that's going to come in the next 6 to 8 weeks because all those disruptions that happened, they're going
Yeah.
to come through. And look, maybe the company says, oh, Q2 we're going to miss by 50%, but Q3 is going to be fine, and the stock doesn't miss a beat. But when stocks are at an RSI of 70, well, that isn't usually how it works, right? And that's one of the things I tell people is that when stocks are very overbought, it almost doesn't matter what the news is. The stock's going to trade off. And when stocks are very oversold, it doesn't matter what the news is. I mean, pull up a chart of FTNT. I mean, Palantir would also be the same thing. Okay, you just pull up Palantir actually, because I know people want to talk about it. Palantir going into the number had an RSI of 72. They put up a great number. Stock sold off because it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Then you had, if you wanted to, you had an opportunity to buy it. Now it's back at these highs, but just wait for your setups. Like, because what I definitely would not be doing here is, as a trader, I would not be riding the wave, the up wave, right?
Mhm.
We're really overbought. A lot of nasty fundamental stuff in front of us, and it just feels too one way, and that's just not how it works. Like, there's symmetry in the markets,
Yeah.
and the symmetry says that there's some freaky is going to happen, sometime in the next 6 weeks. So
Okay. Yeah, I hear that. And like, I look at things like this and you mentioned like we've been talking about Robinhood, we've been talking about PLTR. You can tell these are going to be if and when things shake out, which they always do at some point, these are going to be market leaders. So there's no rush to go out and try to, if you like these stocks, to go out and grab these here at these elevated RSIs, these elevated prices. You can just write them down, put them in your pocket. And then, like you said, you get these opportunities here and there, depending upon how aggressive you are. If you were super aggressive and you're saying, okay, this was my entry right here with it gapping down 12% on good earnings, I can grab this for a small trade. Boom, there you go. You're right back to where it started again. You got a double digit gain right there. You can sell that. So, I mean, you can think tactically about these things. And also, if you're longer term, it's the same deal. You don't have to be buying here at these highs.
I think you just brought up a great concept too, because I'm going to blow people's minds. Like, we're all looking for the leaders. It was Mag 7 before and all that. We're like, what are going to be the leaders for this? And I look, I think, I'm positive of the Mag 7. Maybe crypto stocks are the leaders. Maybe it's Hood and Coin and Games. I know they can't be leaders. Look, they don't have the market cap. But if we're looking for, these charts look great. We know Trump is pro crypto. Like, crypto doesn't have anything to do with China or tariffs or Russia or anything.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we're going to look back and Coin and Hood. And the problem is the miners, which I know you've done a lot in the past. It's just a terrible business.
Yeah.
But I really like the way. So you got Strategy, Coin, and Hood. These stocks have acted like champions. Holy cow! I mean, Coin's been kind of not so good. It's now catching up. But yeah, I like all these stocks on pullbacks, especially now because I stick with. I don't know when Bitcoin broke through 100,000, and I was saying 250,000 by year end. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah." 4 weeks ago, like, no, Bitcoin's going back to 40.
Right.
Well, nothing really changed, man. Like, we still got all these ETFs coming out. We still got all these other things. So I think it could be a really good area to hunt.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving on to some more emotional plays for some people, the spike trade and Tesla. We have Tesla breaking out late last week here. I know you get driven around by your Tesla chauffeur now everywhere you go. What do you make of this particular breakout right here? Do you think after I think maybe it might need to reset at some point, but do you think this has legs, and do you think we could see the 400 mid 400s again, in short order?
I mean, I kind of do. I think you need to pull back to those moving averages, but I think Elon's going to be less active in the government. I think he's going to refocus. There's been a history of this, by the way, of like him getting distracted and refocused, etc. There's at some point too the crappy numbers at Tesla become not a positive, but they kind of get priced in.
Yeah.
So I like this stock on a pullback from this little extension. I mean, Tesla's at an RSI of 67. I want to, and I bored you with this story, but I want to tell the people when we got on this call last week. I told the story about how I had taken like myself driving to the gym that morning, and I was like blown away. Well, that afternoon, I actually went out and drove from my place in New Milford, Connecticut to Pine Brook, New Jersey, which is like 90 miles. And I didn't touch the steering wheel once, literally. Like I pulled out of my house and didn't touch it. I had my 8-year-old with me too. And then we drove from Pine Brook to Yankee Stadium, and then from Yankee Stadium back to New Milford, another 90 miles. And the only time I touched the steering wheel was when we were getting into Yankee Stadium. I had to figure out the parking. Like I drove probably 200 miles without touching the steering wheel. I was mind blown. Like it's not that that's super stressful, but it's pretty stressful, the sawmill and all that stuff. And I was just like, this is awesome. You still have to watch the road. You can't sit there texting or something. But I'm telling you, this is going to be, I think we're going to have a moment in time here where AV, autonomous vehicles, is really going to show up. Like everyone who's listening right now, I think you before year end are going to have an AV experience and you're going to be like, holy cow, this is real. And it's a game. I mean, I said on one of our editorial calls, I have to drive back and forth from the city and whatever, it's 2 hours. I'm never going to not use the Tesla to do that. I'm going to let the car drive every single time because it's like, it's mind numbing and a little stressful. So, but here's my point. What if, Musk is out of the government or mostly, their numbers, things settle down with China. And then what if AV, what I'm saying, everyone on this call in the next 6 months, whether it's via Waymo, a person with an EV, et cetera, has that experience. That's a chat GPT level. Like, again, everyone on this call, like many of us have heard of AI, but then we didn't really mean anything to our life. Then you got chat GPT, and then it was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. I think you're going to get in, an autonomous Tesla or a Waymo, and you're going to be like, holy cow, I know we've been talking about this for 10 years, but this is here. I drove 200 miles with my 8-year-old to do. I mean, boom, mind blown. So I'm pretty constructive because also Tesla, I haven't liked it because numbers were going down, but Tesla's a narrative stock.
Yeah.
You
Sure.
know,
Yep.
and now with Musk kind of going the other way, China going the other way, and this giant AV story that it's going to have this chat GPT moment. The chat GPT moment is your Netscape moment, right? It was like when the internet was coming up, and then the first time you actually had a real browser, Netscape. It was like, holy cow, look at this, all this stuff. So yeah, I'm pretty I don't know if it says passe to say I'm constructive Tesla. I haven't been. The Mag 7 was the one I was consistently critical of.
Yeah.
But I think it's I think it's a really interesting setup.
Yeah. And it feels like, and correct me if you think I'm wrong about this, but over the past couple weeks, it feels like Elon has dropped off the front page of the news. They've become less obsessed with him. He's been less public, in a way, like involved in the government. So maybe I think that's good for the stock, probably. The less he's out there as like a part of the government, if that really holds true, and they become bored with him and they move on, and he moves on to something else. I mean, that's a big positive. That kind of kills the hate trade a little bit too.
Yeah. Look, I'm just big idea. Like if we get this AV Chat GPT moment, Tesla 500.
True. All right. I like that. And I mean, hey, it was actually kind of in the neighborhood back in December. So
it's just going back to where it was at the start of the year. But yeah, so maybe it's not that bold of a call.
No, but I mean, that's a serious move though. It's at $320. So yeah.
Well, I was going to say it's a bold call because if you buy the stock right now, you're going to be up 80%.
Yeah.
So, but how about that? How about crypto and Tesla lead this market? Crypto and AV lead this market in 2025. That would not be in anyone's whatchamacallit bingo card coming in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You mentioned the Mag 7. There's a stock that maybe some people have heard of, Nvidia, that's breaking out today, and it feels like the semis are getting their act together after some tariff scares, especially some of the smaller ones. The also rans were really running on the aftermath day of the China news yesterday. What do you make of the semis? And do you have any particular ones that you like right here? Do you think
Well,
they're
first thing I say, I look at it, I go NVIDIA RSI of 70. So
Yeah.
you know my first answer.
Yep.
They're gonna report at the end of May. I think the numbers are gonna be good. I was actually quite intrigued, and we do mix in some fundamentals here. I was intrigued by this the idea of the Saudis going out and basically becoming a new hyperscaler. And I think it speaks to my concern about demand for NVIDIA, which is going to play out sooner or later, is that Microsoft, Google, the big hyperscalers, Meta and Amazon kind of build out and get a little over their skis in terms of having enough capacity.
Right.
But there's an interesting case. What if you also see national champions, right? To what extent do governments begin to look at it like power, right? That we got to own our own, some of our own infrastructure. So, I'm pretty constructive on Nvidia like that. Again, could Saudi go out and build a half a billion of whatchamacallit? Sorry, a half a trillion of data center in the Middle East, because there's so much water. But it's pretty. So I like him. Look, I'm constructive. I just think it's very hard to buy him here at whatchamacallit. And then it just goes all across the board. Like they've all Avgo's hitting, had a nice recovery. I think something like Marvell is interesting because it's down so much. But just wait, just wait. There's a study that Bespoke puts up all the time that if you buy the stock market the day after it's up 1%, your returns are X. If you buy the stock market the day after it's down 1%, your returns are literally 4X. By the way, if you just hold the stock market and own it the whole time, your returns are 5X. It's yeah, like I think it's a nice setup. I'm going to be very interested to see these hyperscaler numbers, how they impact other things like Credo, and some of that stuff. Yeah, like it. Good fundamental setup. I think numbers are going to be great for NVIDIA. I just don't like buying stocks at 70 RSI. And that's the other thing. Just go today, and I don't even know, I can pull it up. Find things that are down. Find things that have reported earnings in the last week and traded off 20% of those earnings. Because, and look, some of those have already happened. Palantir's already come all the way back. But find things that this week that report and trade down 10, 5, 15, 20%. Those are going to be interesting things if they were if they beat numbers, they're in a well-established uptrend.
Yeah, I like that. What do you think of since we've been mentioning mags, what do you think of the whole Google AI scare that happened? Do you see something like that, like a big red candle on just some analysts talking about how AI is going to ruin their business, their search business, and say like, "Ooh, that's a red candle that I want to buy once it sets back up"?
Well, I love the Google setup. I think we're going to look back at Google in this moment in time and just be like, you got to be joking. Like, I can't believe we sold it off on that. And I mean, I guess I'll just give 3 data points. Number one, break it up. It's worth a lot more. Okay. And then you have a lot of businesses that don't have these problems. Number two, I've gone back and forth through the Justice Department remedies, and there's just no way 90% of that gets done. And number three, ChatGPT has 500 million users who don't pay anything, by the way, or aren't really paying. They've got subscribers, but there's no advertising on it. Gemini has about a quarter of that, but Google has 5 billion users. So the idea that this is going to happen, I think it'll have an impact on the business. I think it's priced into the stock. I think that Google's got a long way to go out of here. So, I mean, if you were to ask me what are my favorite mags, probably Tesla and Google. I like buying the ones that are down,
Yeah.
I think Apple's an interesting case. I will tell you something I read interesting about Apple, although it's not going to play out for a while. In 2027, they're doing a whole product refresh. They're actually going to have foldable screens finally, which are pretty common in Asia. They're doing a refresh on the earbuds. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So, I think you could look at some of the Mag 7 that are down and just buy them. And maybe that's a little bit of the story of this market right now is that this would be very normal in a recovery off of a bear market or sell off is find the high quality companies that have lagged and buy those because they'll catch up. And right now that's Tesla, Apple, and Google versus Meta, which is back to where it was in January.
Yeah.
Nvidia, which is back to where it was. Even Amazon has popped a lot more. I like that trade. When we're looking at those larger things, but I think Tesla and Google in particular set up really, really interesting.
Yeah, you got Microsoft all the way back to its highs there, to that shelf of highs
Oh
from
yeah, there's the one that I just went through all the charts. I was like, I'm missing one.
December, January. I mean, they had a huge
Oh
earnings
yeah,
and floating higher. So,
yeah.
um, I promised John Sanchez, he asked me a strategy question, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit before we get to some chart requests here. And I copied and pasted it actually, so everybody can benefit from this, John. He wanted me to talk about my philosophy on when I take profits. And he's talking about the Bros trade specifically. We just took profits on a Bros trade that we put on Friday as an earnings drift. This is before all the China news, obviously. And so we got a gift on Monday with this stock. The stock was up 10% yesterday and then sold today as it was basically break even, consolidating those gains right there for triple digits just in a couple trading days right there. He wants to know if I would bring my stop loss to break even on this and sell half for a double and then let the rest run. I didn't do that this time. I do that occasionally. In this particular market, I felt it was best to take the money off the table. We have June strikes. Take the 100% and run with it, because while I think that this stock is very strong and it has a history of making these big moves, at the same time, we're right back here to where these pivot highs are from the end of March, right at the $70 area. And this is where it could just mark time. It could retreat all the way down here to 62 before seeing 80 again. So while I do think, and there's been a lot of talk in the chat, just to give some context about like this could go to $80. I think it could go to $80. It certainly could. But with options, we have the time element that we're dealing with here. And I think it's best to take that triple digits off the table, especially in this market. And then if we can go back to the well, maybe this stock will set up for another trade again in the future. But and Enrique, I see you nodding right there. So I guess you something like this. If I had some shares, then maybe I would consider like just hanging on to some shares here with the time element. I just don't feel that comfortable in this particular market holding on.
Well, it's funny, John, you mentioned that. I've talked a little bit about the algorithmic trading system I have called Signal Trader Pro, and we launched the first version of this version of it last July, and we're launching the second version this coming July, here in a couple months. And we're actually going to incorporate what you said, is this idea of once you get to a certain degree of profit, you basically move the stop loss up to break even and take profits on half. So as a trading strategy, I absolutely love that. I think it's so smart. I think it really can put you in an incredible position to win. Going to what Gunnar said, though, these are options, and I think that the two bets that Gunnar's making in selling the whole thing, and I love both of them, is number one, as we just talked about, the probability that we get some sort of volatility coming in front of us here is pretty high. Maybe it doesn't happen, and that's great. If it doesn't happen, you missed out on some gains, but you booked 100% gain. Okay, never cry about making money. But we know we have that in front of us. And then the other thing, and it's so insightful and so important, Gunnar's strategy is so powerful because it finds these high probability bets and then it employs leverage so that you can make massive returns in a short period of time. The challenge, the trade-off is time. Is that I agree that maybe it goes to 80, but it also could go to 65 or 60 before it goes to 80. And if it does that, the options could be worthless, even though you were right about 80.
Yeah.
And so that's the challenge with the options. This is the trade that you do. And so John, I love your strategy. We're literally incorporating it into my own software system. But then, it's contextual. And I think that in the context of where we are in the stock market, and because Gunnar was using options, then it makes a lot more sense. The move they did made a lot of sense. And again, this is about probabilities. Like I hope Gunnar's wrong. Okay. In the sense that y'all still made 100%, and then the market's higher, and we're just going to get more setups. But
Yeah.
you take it, and this is why traders win in every market, right? Because they build these asymmetrical risk rewards, these asymmetrical returns, and they're ready for anything. So I love one of my other sayings: trade a lot or don't trade at all, and that's how you win. It's when you get caught in the middle, right? When you own an investment, then you start to do risk management, or you're put on a trade, but now it got really cheap. I'm going to keep on owning it. Though, if you ever say those two sentences in your head, run away, sell whatever it is, reset, trade a lot or don't trade at all. And I think it speaks to what Gunner's strategy is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also, just another mental thing that I think about when I'm doing this, when I get a gift from the market, and when I say a gift, I mean something goes my way, but it has nothing to do with why I took the trade. And for this instance, it was the China news that popped. I didn't take this trade because I was like, oh, if I buy this stock, I'm going to get positive China news on over the weekend, and it's going to gap the market up, and the market's going to run, and everything's going to run with it. When that happens, take it. Take the present. Take the gift.
Well, and that's the funny thing about charts is that in the short term, narrative follows price, not the other way around. And so you identified a potential that existed in the chart, in the price, and it could have been any number of catalysts.
Yeah.
That could have driven it. And in this case, it was that news. But I don't sell catalysts. I sell price. So I don't give a darn what the catalyst is, right?
Sure.
It could have been added to an index. It could have been they discovered coffee prevents cancer. I don't care. Because I'm not selling the story. I'm selling the darn stock. So I buy it at 60 and sell it at 70.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally fair. Is there anything else that I haven't hit on that we need to talk about before we go to some chart requests in the chat, Enrique? What are you thinking?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we've been very consistent. The one thing I would caution people to is just be patient right now. It's so easy. Market's gone up for a month in a row. And we got things in breaking profits that we are up 50% in a month, in 6 weeks. And that's great. But that scares me more than it excites me, right? When stocks are down 50% in 6 weeks, I'm excited. I'm concerned. I'm watching what's going on, but I just be patient. Wait for your pitch.
Yeah. I'm scrolling through the chat here, and somebody mentioned SoundHound, which we briefly chatted about earlier this morning. And this is quite the trader, I would call it. It's a retail name. It's an interesting stock. I mean, exploding higher this week. I don't think it's any. It's a tough one. Like
it's got some Trump coin kind of vibes to it. Because of the thing I sent you, that the percentage of the float short on SoundHound is 31%.
Yeah.
So there's 1/3 of stocks are out there. Now that's only 5 days of volume, but 5 days of volume is a lot. Look, I would rather buy, like I said, the Maverick pick for tomorrow is an awesome company. Great chart, just sold off, and I think it's going to revert. But if you told me SoundHound, would I buy it as a speculation at 10, with 1/3 of the stock short, pretty darn interesting.
Yeah.
I was skeptical. So this gets back to like the Rigettis of the world and all that. It brings up a narrative that we were talking about 3-4 weeks ago. People were asking about these kinds of stocks, and I said, why would you do that when you can buy Amazon down 30% in a straight line? Well, you know what? Amazon's not down 30% in a straight line anymore. So, and the markets begin to stabilize. So I think it's an interesting speculation. I just would size it small and wouldn't buy it right here, buy it, 10% down, And just when you buy it, be prepared to lose 30% of your money. Like if you buy a 1.3% position and just in your head be like it's a one.
That's fair.
And you're going to trade it a lot better if you do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's survived earnings, so you got no earnings in the way right here. I mean, maybe it does drift. It's interesting. And your favorite stock is Rigetti, right? You mentioned that one. Still somehow floating along up here.
They're all doing it. They're all doing it. Look,
no, it's crazy. Yeah.
And I gotta tell you that just the chartist in me says, even when we get the volatility, I don't know that this is going to break much below 7, 8. I still just don't. I just think there's better things to do. But that chart's really constructive. I mean, it held the 50 and 100 day. That 50 days now moving back up towards the 100. It's making a nice base.
Yeah, I mean, it really is.
I certainly wouldn't be short the darn thing.
The fact that it's not $2 is insanely impressive. So
incredibly impressive. But that gets to this market. That gets to the I talk about these breadth thrusts that are super rare. That DeGraff breadth thrust is just like, I had one here. I'm going to share one with you. What was the one I had just right now? It just came across my desk this morning, and here it was. This was, okay, the fastest declines from over 40 on the VIX to 20 since 1990. Okay. This is under 100 days. It's only happened 5 times. Every single time the stock market is higher 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year later. So we're seeing breadth thrust. We're seeing like these super speculative pieces of garbage holding in. It's all constructive. I mean, I hate to say, like, we've seen crypto, holding in. So here's my point. That's not telling you to go out and buy garbage and crypto. It's not telling you to do that, but it's saying that you can begin to play again. The field is dried out enough that we can go out and start to, do some batting practice and take some pitches versus, I'm looking outside, it's just pouring rain, versus we had the tarp on the field for a month, and we should have, because if we wouldn't have got out and tried to run the bases on that field, we were going to break our ankle, and now it's dried out and we're waiting. Like, it's still cloudy. The umps are saying, okay, let's do a practice inning. And I think that's where we are in the stock market. And Rigetti's telling us that. Sound's telling us that. All these stocks.
Yeah. Credo. This one always pops up. Oh, well, there we go. I must have been talking about this the other week because I got a line on the chart here that I drew when I was discussing it. But this has popped. I mean, again, I don't want to be a broken record, but it's the same stuff we've talked about from earlier in the call. We got elevated RSI on something like this. It's made a big move in a short period of time. It's definitely on the comeback right here. This is not something I would try to grab on a day when it's up 9% and RSI is above 70.
Credo's NVIDIA on steroids. They've been blowing away numbers. They report on May 29th after NVIDIA. I think this is a really interesting buy on a pullback into NVIDIA earnings and Credo earnings on May 29th. I wouldn't buy it here just because you can lose $10. You literally could lose $10 in 3 days and the chart would look great. That's also a thing that when you think about overbought, I always do this. I say, how much could I lose on the stock and it still look like a great chart? Well, in this case, it could go to like, 45, and it would look like, so I could lose 25%. Yeah. And it would be a great chart. That scares me. That concerns me. I don't want to lose 25%. Even if I'm on my way to making 100 and we're not dealing with options, losing 25% ain't cool. Like I'd rather avoid that. So if you find yourself doing that, then you say, okay, let me just wait. So wait for setups, and you can buy them with more conviction now than you could have a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, sir.
I like that. Losing 25% ain't cool. That's
Let's not do that. If we can avoid that, let's avoid that.
Right. Paul S. has mentioned Pony. This is, I know this is going to be a ridiculous chart. I looked at this earlier this week. This chart is absolutely insane. I mean, this is an AI play, right? Is this
This is a Chinese AI play, I think.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, the fact that it was running in February.
So this is actually a Chinese AV thing because they're partnering with Uber
Yeah,
internationally.
that's right.
Um,
That's right.
I mean, I don't know what the heck to do with that chart.
I don't know either.
I
It's
don't.
something.
It was at 15 and then it was going bankrupt, but then people discovered it and now it's back at 15 again.
Yeah,
Uh, I would need to dig in a little bit. It's very rare that you get me to look at a chart and just be like, I don't know.
I don't know.
This chart doesn't really tell you anything other than size it small. I guess
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the only thing it says to me is play small in this because you don't have enough. The other thing too is I guess it only went public in November, so you just don't have a lot of data. I don't know. This thing was trading like a spat. I'd have to get more information, but yeah,
yeah.
my best advice: size it small if you're going to play in this.
It's something. I mean, it's always interesting when you see a stock like this. With I mean, the chart looks insane, but you have a day where it's down 17% and it's back where it was 2 trading days ago.
Yeah, just size it small. But I mean, I what's the next move? 10 seems more likely than 25. I guess is what I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. In this market, who knows? But it's definitely not a high probability bet either direction right now.
Yeah. This is a tough one.
Let's see what else. TSM, is that a request trade
Yeah,
or is that something else?
Taiwan Semiconductor. I don't know if
Oh
they'll
yeah,
put it out there.
Taiwan Semiconductor. There we go.
Looks great. I mean, they
Yeah.
great numbers. They it's back at this base. Looks a lot like the Mag 7. I mean, Taiwan Semiconductor, as far as I'm concerned, is Mag 8.
Okay. I like
You know,
that.
but you know what I'm gonna throw in here? I don't know how many people read. By the way, it's a $1 trillion market. Read Truth and Trends and what I wrote last week. But if you own Berkshire, sell it. Sell, 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 sell. And read the Truth and Trends we wrote. Porter Stansberry, my old colleague, has done some great work basically going through the returns on their non-public stuff. The stuff that Greg Abel's done. The quick thing is the numbers stink. They're really not good. And my bigger concern, that's the guy that's taken over. My bigger concern is remember, stocks aren't companies. Like Berkshire doesn't pay a dividend. They don't buy back stock. They don't, so it's a storage stock. And it trades at 70% premium to book value. And guess what? Munger's not here with us. And at some point, Buffett's not going to be here with us. I hope he lives another 100 years, honestly. But
Yeah.
when Buffett's gone, well, the 70% premium to book value is called the Buffett premium. It ain't the Abel premium, who's some boring Canadian who's blown a bunch of money on private investments. That stock, once Buffett's gone, that stock's going to trade down for 3-6 months straight, and it's going to trade right back down towards book. And so I would just avoid it at all. I'd sell it. If you own Berkshire, it's at all-time highs. This will be within some moment in time here in the next 6 months or around these levels. I think will be the all-time highs we see in Berkshire for the next 5 to 10 years.
All right. Well, I think we
How
can
about that?
I think we can leave it at that. That's quite the sell alert right there. I don't own any Berkshire, but if I did, I'm with
Because
you.
Mark Darnell was mentioning Berkshire on the chat, and but the thing that concerns me about Berkshire's a fine company. They're fine assets. Their utilities are See's Candies, Dairy Queen. I like the banana splits, but it's not like it's such a great return business. And Porter does a great job of going through all that. There's so many people that own such big positions in Berkshire and are like they're treating it like gold,
Right.
or something. But it ain't gonna be when Buffett's gone. It's going down. It's gonna go to book value. It's gonna go down 30%, 40%, and there's gonna be such a disconnect between people who think their retirement is secure and they're gonna be sitting on a 30% loss, and it's gonna break my heart. It's gonna break my heart when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, very different people, but Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, cult of personality type of stock. There's a premium that comes with that.
Well, we talked about this. If Musk died tomorrow Tesla gets cut in half.
Yeah. Wouldn't want it.
Maybe it goes bankrupt, and Berkshire ain't going to do that.
Yeah.
But it's gonna go down a lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, a little bearish to end it there, but I mean, I like how, just one last thought before we go. I like how you and I, we trade differently, and that's a good thing. We have our own things going on, but we're both doing kind of the same thing this week, which is interesting. We're taking profits and we're waiting for these fresh setups, which are going to come along sooner rather than later. And I'm excited about the market. I hope that we don't get too many wrenches thrown in the gears here, and that we can trade some fresh breakouts once things consolidate. And when we do, we'll come back and we'll talk about them here. So, any last words, Enrique?
Be patient. Wait for your pitch. That's it. Like this is. It can be. If the market has a flurry after this, and you're sitting on big losses, and you're super stressed, you have no one to blame but yourself. I mean, we kind of always have no one to blame but ourselves. But just be patient. Wait for the opportunities.
All right. Sounds good. We'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.